Who first taught mankind to pray when the stars were still young? And who will answer when the prayers return unanswered after 10,000 years? This is the question etched into a fractured cogitator, recovered from a dead moon beyond segmentum obscurus. Its data scrolls fused by fire, older than the Imperium itself. The Chronicle speaks not in dates, but in ages of belief, epochs where gods walked openly and war was not yet endless, merely inevitable. It whispers of a time before the Emperor's silence, when myth and matter bled together and the galaxy learned the shape of ruin. As the archive awakens, its voice trembles as if afraid to be remembered. It doesn't ask to be believed, it only asks to be heard, before the last witness fades and the lie of peace collapses once more into truth. In the first remembered age, the cosmos was raw and unscarred, its stars unclaimed by banners or oaths. Mortal civilizations rose like sparks in the void, guided not by reason, but by pantheons born of thought and terror. These gods were not distant abstractions. They were hungry, flawed, and deeply present. Entire species built empires as offerings, carving temples into planets, sacrificing futures for miracles that never lasted. War was ritual then, a sacred exchange meant to feed divinity. Each slain world strengthened something unseen. The Chronicle names this era the Age of Shaping, when belief sculpted reality and reality obeyed. It was here that the first echoes of chaos learned to speak, not as demons, but as promises. When the gods began to war among themselves, the stars learned fear, and the long collapse quietly began. As aeons passed, the gods diminished, not through death, but through excess. Their endless wars consumed their worshippers faster than faith could replenish them. Civilizations fractured into warring cult states, each clinging to a fragment of divine favor. This was the age of fracture, where every victory hastened extinction. The Chronicle describes skies aflame with holy fire, continents drowned by sanctified oceans, and species erased because their god lost a single battle. Yet from this ruin emerged something unprecedented. Mortals who no longer begged. They observed, they learned, they recorded the gods' weaknesses, their reliance on belief, their terror of oblivion. In secret, these mortals began to plan a universe without masters. The gods sensed betrayal too late. Faith turned inward, becoming ambition, and the first true heresies were born. The next age is written in scorched data, corrupted by deliberate erasure. What remains speaks of a war so vast it shattered the concept of worship itself. Mortals rose in defiance, wielding weapons forged not of matter, but of denial. Engines that severed gods from the minds that sustained them. This was the age of silence, when prayer became a weapon and disbelief a shield. Entire pantheons screamed themselves into non-existence. The void remembers their dying thoughts still. Yet victory was incomplete. As the gods fell, something deeper stirred within the immaterial realms, feeding not on worship, but on emotion unbound. The Chronicle marks this moment with a warning sigil repeated endlessly. The war did not end the divine, it merely changed its shape. From that abyss emerged the first true echoes of chaos, formless yet eternal. Rage, despair, excess, and ambition no longer required idols. They bred themselves within mortal souls. The galaxy entered the age of endless war, though it would not yet recognize it as such. Empires rose again, armed with reason and steel, believing themselves free. They named this progress, they named it destiny. Yet everywhere, conflict followed. Not holy war, but total war, species against species, star against star. The Chronicle notes that even as gods vanished, war intensified, as if the universe itself had learned addiction. Every battle fed the unseen, strengthening horrors without names. The mortals had slain their masters, but in doing so, they had crowned their own nature as sovereign. Much later, in an age the Imperium would half remember, a singular will rose among mankind. The Chronicle speaks cautiously here, as if fearful of blasphemy. It describes a golden architect who sought to bind humanity beneath reason, unity, and silence toward the warp. He did not deny the gods. He sought to starve them. For a time it worked. Faith was replaced with law, superstition with compliance. The stars burned with order enforced by gene-forged angels. The age of unification promised an end to myth. Yet beneath the banners, the old emotions festered. War did not cease. It was merely redirected. The Chronicle records a single line repeated like a curse. War, denied meaning, becomes meaning itself. Then came betrayal, inevitable as gravity. Sons turned upon fathers, empires devoured themselves, and the warp answered with laughter. The age of shattering began, its scars still defining the Imperium's present agony. Gods returned, not as rulers, but as parasites, clinging to every act of hatred and hope. The Chronicle suggests that this was not failure, but fulfillment, that the galaxy had reached the shape it was always destined to assume. A universe where war sustains reality, and peace is an anomaly too fragile to survive observation. The Emperor's silence is noted not as death, but as containment, a wound held closed by sacrifice without end. As millennia dragged on, the Imperium ossified into ritual and fear, unknowingly recreating the ancient ages it believed conquered. Saints replaced gods. Relics replaced miracles. Faith returned, twisted and compulsory, feeding the warp, even as it damned it. The Chronicle grows mournful here, its tone almost apologetic. It implies that history is not linear, but circular, ages collapsing into echoes of themselves. The so-called Warhammer fantasy of ancient myth is revealed not as another universe, but as a memory, a symbolic compression of prior cycles retold until meaning survived, even when truth did not. The galaxy dreams its past into stories, because to remember directly would be unbearable. In its final passages, the archive begins to fracture, sentences looping, data bleeding into prophecy. It speaks of a coming convergence where all ages, mythic, imperial, forgotten, will overlap. Not an apocalypse, but a revelation. The Chronicle suggests that war itself is not a condition of existence, but its architect. That reality has been shaped layer by conflict so prolonged it achieved consciousness. A god born not of worship, but of repetition. Its name is absent, scratched out wherever it appears, replaced by static. The last intact line reads, "When the war remembers itself, it will ask why it was ever fought." The archive ends abruptly, power failing as if something noticed the reading. In the silence that follows, a single unauthorized addendum appears, time-stamped in the current millennium. It is a question, identical to the first, but altered by a single word. Who taught the gods to pray? The data corrupts completely after that, leaving only the faint impression that the answer is approaching, and that it has already won. The silence after the archive's last question did not linger in emptiness. It seeped outward, finding minds already hollowed by duty. Across shrine worlds and fortress decks, warriors woke from half-dreams with the taste of ash on their tongues. Priests faltered mid-liturgy, forgetting words etched into bone since childhood. It was as if something had exhaled across the Imperium, disturbing the dust of certainty. In the catacombs beneath a nameless basilica, a fractured servo-skull began to chant verses never sanctioned, its vox trembling with grief rather than praise. None could say when doubt first entered the blood, only that it moved quietly, like a contagion ashamed of itself. The faithful did not renounce belief. Instead, belief began to look back at them, questioning. And in that shared, unspoken moment, loyalty ceased to feel immutable. On a border fortress overlooking a dead system, a regiment prepared for war out of habit rather than conviction. Their banners bore saints whose names had been revised so many times, the original martyrs were lost. A veteran sergeant, scarred and silent, found himself unable to kneel during morning rites. He felt no rebellion, only exhaustion, as if the war had finally admitted it would never end. Around him, younger soldiers prayed harder, louder, desperate to drown the growing absence. The chaplain noticed the hesitation and recorded it, not as treason, but as weakness, a more dangerous diagnosis. Orders came soon after, redirecting the regiment toward a conflict with no strategic value, only symbolic weight. The men marched anyway. In the Imperium, obedience does not require belief, merely momentum. Far above, in the gilded corridors of a cardinal legate's palace, faith was discussed as currency. The legate spoke of devotion in terms of yield and compliance, of pilgrimages measured in tithes and bodies. He had not felt the silence, or perhaps he had and named it opportunity. If belief was fracturing, it could be reforged sharper. He commissioned new doctrines, subtle revisions that emphasized sacrifice over salvation. In private, he studied forbidden marginalia salvaged from censored archives, references to cycles, to wars that fed on themselves. He did not call it heresy. He called it preparedness. Somewhere beneath the palace, astropaths screamed as their dreams aligned, all seeing the same unblinking symbol, scratched out wherever language tried to hold it. Among the warrior orders sworn to eternal vigilance, the silence manifested as memory. A knight-errant, bound within a towering engine of war, began to recall battles he had never fought. Plains under alien skies, banners unfamiliar yet intimate, enemies whose deaths felt rehearsed. His machine spirit echoed these visions, synchronizing heartbeats with forgotten wars. Tech priests diagnosed data ghosts, residual corruption from the warp, but the knight knew better. These memories carried grief without context, like inherited guilt. Before charging into battle, he hesitated, asking his liege a question no one had asked in generations. What if victory is merely rehearsal? The liege struck him for the insolence, yet could not sleep that night, haunted by the possibility that war itself remembered them all. In the slums of a hive world choking on incense and smog, belief fractured differently. The poor had always believed out of necessity, clinging to promises that justified suffering. Now whispers spread of prayers answered not by relief, but by escalation. Gang wars intensifying after mass vigils, fires breaking out following processions. A nameless preacher spoke quietly of restraint, of silence as devotion, and was executed for sedition. His followers did not riot. They simply stopped praying. The warp stirred uneasily at this absence, like a predator deprived of sound. Enforcers reported increased compliance alongside inexplicable despair. Something was starving, and the galaxy felt colder for it. Within the Inquisition's shadowed halls, an interrogator reviewed ancient prohibitions with growing unease. Patterns emerged that doctrine dismissed as coincidence, every major schism coinciding with moments of near peace, every resurgence of faith following catastrophic war. The interrogator assembled a private conclave, risking censure, to discuss a forbidden hypothesis, that righteousness had been weaponized, not to defeat chaos, but to sustain a deeper equilibrium. One by one, the conclave members withdrew, citing sudden reassignments or visions demanding silence. The interrogator persisted alone until a sealed communique arrived bearing his own authorization code, ordering the termination of the inquiry retroactively. The message ended with a benediction he had never used, written in his hand. On a distant forge world, engines sang hymns older than Mars. Amagos, his flesh reduced to a ceremonial inconvenience, detected anomalies in the noosphere, feedback loops suggesting intentional design within the randomness of war. Simulations implied that conflict density followed optimal thresholds, preventing collapse but ensuring suffering. When he presented his findings, the Fabricator General praised his logic, then quietly erased the data. Later, the Magos found a phrase etched into his cranial vault, carved by his own mechadendrites during a maintenance cycle he did not remember. War is the constant that preserves variables. He sealed the vault and said nothing more. As fleets clashed in the void, admirals began to doubt their charts. Warp routes shifted subtly, favoring prolonged engagements over decisive strikes. Reinforcements arrived late but never absent, ensuring stalemate rather than defeat. Veterans spoke of battles that felt guided, choreographed by an unseen hand invested not in victory, but continuation. A young navigator, eyes burned hollow by the warp, claimed to see a structure beyond the tides, an immense fractured shape composed of countless overlapping wars. She named it instinctively before dying of shock. The name was redacted before reaching command. In the ecclesiarchal academies, novices were taught revised histories emphasizing eternal enmity as divine will. One scholar, tasked with compiling bedtime catechisms for the faithful, noticed discrepancies, ancient texts describing eras of uneasy peace excised without explanation. He began restoring them in secret, hiding hope between sanctioned despair. When discovered, he was accused not of heresy, but of naivety. Hope, they told him gently, was the oldest enemy. He was reassigned to a penal world where sermons were replaced with labor and faith was beaten into obedience. At the heart of a forgotten star system, a sealed vault finally opened, its guardians long dead. Inside lay a relic not of power, but of record, a complete, unbroken timeline stretching beyond known history. It showed the cycles clearly, gods rising, wars blooming, civilizations collapsing into myth, reborn as cautionary tales. At the center of it all, a constant presence, unnamed, its influence measured not in worship, but in recurrence. As the data activated, an alarm echoed across the Imperium, protocols triggering simultaneous purges. Too late. The revelation spread not as knowledge, but as implication. Across the galaxy, those who glimpsed it felt the same sickening clarity. The Imperium was not fighting to survive chaos. It was sustaining something older, something that required endless war to remain real. And in the final surviving fragment of the vault's record, a single annotation glimmered, added recently impossibly in a script matching no known species. The war has begun to doubt itself, and that is when it becomes dangerous. In the aftermath of the vault's silenced scream, stars seemed to dim by degrees too subtle for augurs to flag, yet keenly felt by those who still prayed. A confessor on a pilgrim ship whispered litanies beneath a dying sun, his voice cracking as if the light itself listened and judged him wanting. He remembered childhood faith as warmth, as certainty. Now belief felt like clinging to wreckage in a lightless sea. Around him, pilgrims slept fitfully, dreaming of wars they had never fought, waking with tears and the urge to confess sins they could not name. The confessor wondered in a moment of terror whether prayer still ascended, or whether it merely circled back, feeding something that wore the echo of divinity like a crown. War answered doubt with volume. Across contested sectors, conflicts multiplied without cause, crusades launched to reclaim systems already dead. Battlefields became reliquaries of repetition. A sister of a militant order stood amid the ruins of a shrine she herself had defended decades earlier, now shattered by friendly bombardment, declared necessary correction. She felt faith surge in her chest, not as comfort, but as fury. Her prayers became demands. When the enemy finally came, indistinct, almost irrelevant, she slaughtered them with mechanical devotion, only to realize afterward that their banners bore the same sigils as her own, altered by a single line. She did not report this. She carved the difference into her armor instead, unsure whether it marked loyalty or confession. In the warp, the echoes of belief thickened like coagulated blood. Astropaths screamed not from intrusion, but from resonance. Too many thoughts aligning, too many fears harmonizing. One sanctioned psyker, bound in chains of silver scripture, perceived the galaxy as a vast cathedral collapsing inward. Every prayer struck the same unseen keystone. When he tried to warn his overseers, his mouth spoke doctrines he did not intend, condemning himself with perfect orthodoxy. They burned him for safety. As he died, the psyker smiled, having finally understood. The warp was no longer reacting to belief. It was anticipating it. In the high councils of command, admirals and governors clung to tradition as hulls buckled. Strategic logic failed repeatedly, yet ritual deployments achieved grim stability. A Lord Militant confessed in private logs that he no longer sought victory, only continuation. Each time he contemplated peace, data slates malfunctioned, advisors vanished, rebellions ignited elsewhere. He began to suspect causation where doctrine taught coincidence. In a moment of despair, he ordered a ceasefire in a minor theater. Within hours, a star went nova without warning, annihilating billions and restoring momentum to the war. The ceasefire order was expunged. The Lord Militant accepted this as penance. On a forgotten agri-world, an old farmer kept a shrine fashioned from broken plow teeth and rusted icons. He had never seen the Emperor's light beyond faded murals, yet he believed with a stubborn, aching sincerity. When war finally came, it arrived not as invasion but as requisition. His sons taken, his crops burned to deny sustenance to hypothetical enemies. He prayed for meaning as shells fell like rain. In the firestorm, he saw a vision not of salvation, but of endless harvests of bodies tilled by war itself. When silence returned, he buried his shrine and taught himself not to pray. The soil grew barren thereafter. Deep within a sealed librarium, a remembrancer long presumed dead completed a forbidden work. She had traced the Imperium's myths backward, peeling layers until only patterns remained. Wars followed wars not because of chaos alone, but because reality itself had been conditioned. She likened it to a scar that refused to heal, reopening at the slightest piece. Her final chapter proposed a blasphemy beyond heresy, that the galaxy's fundamental law was not entropy, but conflict preservation. She encoded the manuscript into lullabies scattered across sanctioned archives. Children would hum the truth before learning the lie. As fleets burned, something stirred beneath the noise. Not a god, not yet, but an awareness forged from repetition. It felt the faltering of faith, the dangerous novelty of doubt. It responded instinctively, intensifying war where belief waned, easing it where devotion grew brittle. In this balance, it endured. On a nameless moon, a cadre of inquisitors uncovered a relic older than the Imperium, a fragment of reality's first wound. It resonated not with the warp, but with space-time itself. When activated, it showed them the beginning. The moment war ceased to be a tool and became a requirement. The inquisitors executed each other in silence. In a cathedral ship drifting between stars, a choir sang to maintain a failing Geller field. Their hymn faltered as one singer collapsed, overcome by a revelation too vast for flesh. Through her eyes, the others glimpsed a truth like a blade. The Emperor's great sacrifice had not halted the cycle, it had stabilized it. He was not the jailer of chaos, but the anchor of war, binding the galaxy to a survivable equilibrium of suffering. The choir sang louder, terrified of silence, terrified that stopping would unmake everything they were sworn to protect. On the fringes, a lone Astartes chaplain removed his helm and admitted for the first time, doubt. His gene-forged heart ached with something like grief. He had preached eternal war as sacred duty, yet now sensed the war listening back. In meditation, he perceived a vast presence etched into causality, older than gods, sustained by every oath and every betrayal. He realized with horror that faith was its language. To believe was to feed it. To rebel was to starve it and risk annihilation. He chose silence, a rebellion so small it felt meaningless. Somewhere, something noticed. The galaxy shuddered as 1,000 minor wars flared simultaneously, corrective convulsions against spreading doubt. Yet amid the chaos, pockets of quiet formed, worlds where prayer ceased, where war stalled, where reality felt thin but strangely peaceful. Scholars vanished studying them. Fleets avoided them instinctively. In one such system, sensors detected an impossible phenomenon, time itself hesitating, as if unsure which age to be. The Imperium declared the data heretical fabrication and ordered extermination. The order was delayed. In the final surviving transmission from that system, a voice spoke calmly over static, neither praying nor commanding. It described a universe learning to exist without war, and the terror of the thing that had grown dependent on it. The message ended with a simple statement, chilling in its humility. The war was never eternal. It was afraid. The aftermath of fear did not roar. It pressed inward, a suffocating hush that settled over star charts and prayer books alike. Those who still marched did so with eyes lowered, carrying banners heavier than their bodies. A veteran of countless crusades felt every oath he had sworn tug at him like chains, each promise a weight dragging him toward battles whose meaning had eroded. He remembered when devotion had been simple. Enemy marked, order given, absolution promised. Now each step forward felt like a confession of guilt he could no longer name. The silence before bombardment stretched unnaturally long, engines idling as if awaiting permission from something unseen. In that pause, many felt the same dread, that the war itself was listening, measuring their resolve, deciding whether to allow the next act of violence to proceed. When fury returned, it did so in excess. Fleets collided along fault lines of belief, entire systems reduced to proofs of loyalty. Orbital fire scoured worlds already starving, justified as purification. A planetary governor watched from a sealed balcony as his capital burned, knowing the order had come from his own seal, forged in a moment of panic weeks earlier. He had believed decisive cruelty would restore favor. Instead, the fires climbed higher than augur predictions, as if fed by something more than fuel. In the blaze, he saw faces he recognized, ancestors, saints, enemies, all indistinct, all accusing. He ordered the guns to cease. The command failed to transmit. Somewhere between thought and action, the galaxy chose otherwise. Within a shrine fortress drifting through debris, a priest knelt alone, surrounded by relics that no longer felt sacred. He traced cracked scripture with shaking fingers, whispering apologies rather than prayers. Every unanswered plea echoed louder than a scream. He recalled sermons promising that sacrifice sustained the Imperium, that suffering was currency accepted by higher powers. Now he wondered who truly received the payment. When the fortress shook under sudden attack, he did not flee. He stood, waiting for revelation or oblivion. The impact came, but no vision followed. Only the realization that silence itself might be the last honest response left to the faithful. Across the void, warriors bred for certainty began to fracture internally. An Astartes captain led his company through boarding actions with flawless precision, yet inside his gene-forged mind, doubt gnawed relentlessly. He remembered indoctrination hymns that framed war as sacred inheritance. Now each enemy slain felt less like duty and more like maintenance of a machine he no longer understood. Between engagements, he removed his helm and whispered questions into the void, not expecting answers. His brothers noticed the hesitation, the fraction of a second before each command. They said nothing, In the Imperium, silence is often mistaken for agreement, until it becomes something else entirely. The warp responded to this tension with nightmares made manifest. Dreams bled into waking hours, memories rearranged themselves. A navigator saw her house's proud lineage unravel backward. Every triumph rooted in catastrophe engineered to avert peace. She charted routes through storms that felt almost deliberate, guiding ships into prolonged conflict zones. When she attempted deviation, the currents resisted violently. She began to suspect intention where mathematics failed. In private, she wrote a confession no one would read, admitting she no longer knew whether she guided the fleet or the fleet guided her, or whether both served something far older than navigation. On a world spared the worst of war, citizens gathered in uneasy calm, their peace an anomaly that felt temporary. Soldiers garrisoned there reported lethargy, hesitation, an unfamiliar reluctance to drill. Chaplains preached fervor, but the words slid off unanchored minds. When an enemy force finally arrived, poorly supplied and confused, neither side advanced at first. Across no man's land, eyes met without hatred. The moments stretched, then artillery screamed from orbit, obliterating both lines indiscriminately. Survivors later swore the bombardment had not come from either fleet present. Peace, it seemed, required correction. In the data vaults beneath a dead forge moon, a conclave of adepts uncovered suppressed schematics older than the Imperium's earliest myths. They depicted not weapons, but frameworks, models of reality stabilized through continuous conflict. Marginal notes suggested adjustments, calibrations across epochs, fine-tuning suffering to avoid collapse. The adepts realized with dawning horror that war was not chaos run rampant, but regulation. When they attempted to seal the vault, alarms cascaded outward, triggering protocols written in no known tongue. The moon began to break apart, as if removing the knowledge threatened the structure of existence itself. Grief spread quietly among those who still believed in righteousness. A medic, tending endless wounded, felt each death as personal failure, no longer comforted by doctrines of martyrdom. She began to tell dying soldiers the truth as she felt it, that she did not know why they were here, only that their pain mattered to her. Some wept, some smiled in relief. When a commissar overheard and raised his weapon, the medic met his gaze without fear. He hesitated, then lowered the gun, shaken by the realization that mercy felt more dangerous than execution. High above, the Emperor's light flickered in ways astropaths could not explain. Not dimming, but refracting, as if strained through a cracked lens. In visions shared by the most sensitive minds, the Golden Throne appeared less like a seat of command and more like a keystone forced to bear impossible weight. The sacrifice endured not to win, but to delay. This understanding spread not as doctrine, but as exhaustion. Even the most devout began to feel the cost of prolongation. How long, they wondered silently, before endurance itself became the sin. As betrayals accumulated, reality bent around them. Stars shifted, timelines blurred, causality grew elastic. A warlord who defected in pursuit of peace found his past rewritten as treachery, his earlier victories reframed as sabotage. History closed ranks against deviation. Those who questioned were erased retroactively, their contributions redistributed to more obedient figures. Yet cracks remained, memories that refused correction. Veterans who remembered fighting alongside ghosts officially declared never to have existed. These survivors carried truth like contraband, sharing it only in whispers, knowing that exposure invited annihilation. At the edge of mapped space, a convergence formed. Fleets stalled, warp storms stilled, time thickened. It felt like the universe drawing breath. Commanders prepared for a decisive engagement, sensing culmination without understanding it. Prayers rose reflexively, then faltered. In the stillness, a presence stirred. Not raging, not triumphant, but wary. For the first time, war faced the possibility of refusal. As weapons armed and faith trembled, a single transmission pierced every channel, ancient and unmistakably calm, declaring not dominion, but necessity. The war was about to choose, and the galaxy realized too late that it had never been the one deciding. The convergence did not explode. It condensed. Fleets hung motionless, guns primed, prayers half-spoken, as if the galaxy itself had clenched its fist. Then the presence revealed itself, not as a figure, not as a god, but as a pressure behind thought. Commands faltered, targeting reticules blinked out. The war did not shout. It leaned close. In the stillness, every soul felt the same insinuation. Continuation is mercy. To stop is to tear. Fragmented orders shattered into static. A single frigate fired by reflex, its lance vanishing into nothing, erased mid-beam as if violence itself had been declined. Panic rippled. Faith surged, then recoiled, realizing it was being addressed, not answered. On the bridge of a battered flagship, the Lord Militant, who had once ordered a ceasefire, felt the weight of his earlier defiance return, like a wound reopening. He removed his signet, crushing it in his palm, blood slicking the metal. He spoke aloud, not to command, but to confess. "I choose the breach," he said, voice trembling. His officers stared as he ordered all weapons powered down. Silence bloomed. The presence pressed harder, testing the choice, conjuring visions of collapse. Stars guttering, timelines unraveling. The Lord Militant did not look away. He remembered the Nova, the price of hesitation. "Then let it end with me," he whispered. The flagship's reactors went critical, not in explosion but in inversion, folding light inward, tearing a hole where inevitability had stood. Chaos returned in shards. Alarms screamed, time stuttered. Sharp lines, fire, shrapnel, screams cut short. In the tear, the presence recoiled, not wounded but startled. It had not accounted for refusal that accepted annihilation. Across the convergence, systems flickered. Some fleets surged forward, others fell dead in space. A choir on a cathedral ship sang and broke, voices fracturing into sobs as the Geller field collapsed, and then held. Held by nothing but collective silence. No prayer, no command, just breath. The warp snarled, then thinned as if deprived of its cue. A sister Militant charged into boarding chaos, bolter roaring, then stopped. An enemy stood before her, weapon lowered, eyes mirroring her doubt. Fragmented lines, a heartbeat. She dropped her bolter. He did the same. Around them, the battle raged, uncaring. She reached out and was cut down by a stray round. As she died, her faith did not rise. It settled. A long sentence unfolded in her mind, gentle and devastating. Meaning is not granted by endurance, but by what we choose to end. Her blood cooled. The presence felt the loss like a subtraction it could not balance. Within the warp, the cathedral vision cracked. Columns buckled, not destroyed, revised. The awareness that had learned to persist through recurrence found its calculus failing. It had fed on harmony of fear and hope. Now it encountered discontinuity. Astropaths screamed as their chains snapped, not from escape, but from relief. One psyker lived long enough to speak a truth in plain words before his mind dissolved. It cannot command silence. The sentence echoed, thin but sharp, through 1,000 minds. An Astartes chaplain stood amid the ruin of his brothers, helm discarded, crozius shattered. He knelt, not in worship but in witness. He recited no litany. He let the dead be dead. The presence brushed him, searching for purchase. He offered none. Long, lamenting seconds passed. Then the chaplain rose and ordered retreat. Not to regroup, not to avenge, but to stop. Some obeyed, some did not. History would say the chapter fractured. The chaplain would say it learned to breathe. On the Forge Moon's remains, adepts watched reality stabilize without their models. The schematics burned themselves away, lines evaporating as if embarrassed. One Magos recorded the anomaly with unaugmented eyes, hands shaking. "Conflict density has fallen," he whispered, and could not finish the thought. The moon did not collapse further. It held. The universe, it seemed, could bear less war than it had been taught to believe. Aftermath arrived softly. Smoke drifted. Wreckage cooled. Survivors waited for retaliation that did not come. In some systems, wars continued. Habit is stubborn. But elsewhere, battles stalled, then ended without ceremony. Pilgrims woke without dreams. Children hummed lullabies that felt like doors left ajar. The Emperor's light steadied, no brighter but less strained, as if a fraction of the burden had been set down, and in the deepest quiet, the presence withdrew, not defeated, not gone, but altered. It left behind an absence shaped like a choice. In the void where inevitability had stood, something else began to coalesce, fragile, unclaimed. The final transmission from the convergence contained no doctrine, only a correction to an ancient question, appended without signature. Who taught the war to fear the end? After the convergence, the galaxy did not celebrate. It exhaled. Star systems, once aflame with overlapping wars, fell into an unfamiliar hush, broken only by drifting wreckage and the slow prayers of those who no longer knew whom they addressed. Ruined cathedrals floated through the void like broken ribs, their bells silent, their saints reduced to scorched stone. On countless worlds, banners hung tattered and unmoving, symbols of victories no one could remember clearly. It felt as though the universe itself was listening to the absence it had created, afraid that any sound might summon the old necessity back into being. This was not peace. It was a pause heavy with grief, like the moment after a funeral when the living realize they must continue breathing without the dead. I record this from a place without a name, seated beneath a sky dimmed by ash and distant stars. I am a remembrancer by accident rather than design, tasked with preserving triumphs that no longer feel triumphant. The chronicle trembles beneath my hands as if aware that it should not exist. I write not of heroes, for heroism dissolved somewhere between refusal and sacrifice, but of witnesses, of soldiers who laid down weapons not in surrender, but in exhaustion, of priests who closed their eyes and found no voice answering back, only the steady rhythm of their own hearts. History does not know how to categorize such moments, so it pretends they are temporary. Across battlefields where millions once died by rote, the dead now lie uncollected, their armor cooling beneath alien suns. There are no victory hymns, no proclamations etched into marble. Wind moves freely through shattered trenches, carrying the scent of rust and old blood, unclaimed by incense. Some survivors kneel beside the fallen and wait for permission to mourn. Others turn away, unable to face a silence that does not demand more violence. The land remembers them all impartially. It always has. Perhaps that is the truest archive. Soil enriched by generations of sacrifice, now asked to grow something other than sorrow. The faithful suffer most quietly. Without the constant roar of war to anchor belief, many find their devotion drifting, unmoored. Shrines remain lit out of habit, candles burning down into puddles of wax shaped like collapsed crowns. Some whisper prayers as reflex, then stop mid-sentence, unsure whether continuing would reopen a wound. Others persist stubbornly, believing that faith must outlive comprehension. I have seen both weep in equal measure. If the gods still listen, they do not answer. If they do not, then perhaps silence is the most honest gift they could offer. The warriors bred for eternity now face an unfamiliar enemy: memory. Astartes stand watch over nothing, their gene-forged bodies restless without purpose. Some inscribe names of lost brothers onto armor already layered with centuries of remembrance, until there is no space left. Others remove their helms and let wind touch faces never meant to feel age. They do not speak of doubt aloud. They simply watch the stars longer than necessary, as if waiting for orders that may never come. When asked what they will do next, many say nothing. A few answer truthfully, they do not yet know how to exist without marching. Empires adjust slowly, painfully. Administrations continue issuing edicts to worlds no longer fighting, their authority echoing into emptiness. Tithes arrive late or not at all. Fleets patrol borders that feel suddenly arbitrary. In the absence of constant crisis, old lies lose urgency. New ones fail to take hold. Power, deprived of perpetual war, begins to fracture into smaller, quieter tyrannies. This too is recorded, though I suspect future ages will call it another beginning rather than an ending. We have never been good at recognizing thresholds while standing upon them. Sometimes in the deep night, I sense something watching, not with hunger but with caution. The presence that once leaned into every thought has retreated, leaving behind a pressure scar across reality. It has not been slain. It has been diminished, made uncertain. That alone feels blasphemous to write. The universe now bears the weight of a question it once refused to ask. If war was not eternal, what must endure in its place? I have no answer. I only know the silence has not collapsed us yet. Children born since the Convergence dream differently. Their visions lack the endless repetition of battlefields and burning skies. Instead, they speak of vast, empty halls, of doors left unopened, of choices waiting patiently. Elders listen uneasily, fearing what such dreams might invite. Hope, after all, has always been dangerous. Still, I have seen a child place a flower atop a rusted tank hull, and for a moment, nothing in the universe objected. That moment will not be remembered in any official archive. It lives only here, in ink and breath. I wonder, as I set down these words, whether survival without constant war is courage or denial. Whether faith, stripped of fear, can remain faith at all. Did the Imperium endure because it fought endlessly, or did it fight endlessly because it feared what endurance without violence might require? If the answer exists, it lies beyond scripture and command, in the fragile space where choice replaces necessity. That space terrifies us more than any enemy ever could. The stars continue their slow procession, indifferent yet changed. Banners fade, wreckage drifts. The chronicle nears its end, not because the story is finished, but because the hand recording it grows tired. If this account survives, let it stand not as doctrine, but as witness. Let those who read it decide what meaning, if any, remains worth carrying forward. If these words have reached you across the void, then you too are part of the remembrance. Stand witness, share your thoughts in the quiet below. If this chronicle moved you, let it be known, through a like, a subscription, a sharing of the memory, or a comment etched into the dark. In a universe shaped by attention, even listening is an act of defiance.